All right, man, here we go.
Yeah, I feel like we got classy shirt day today.
I
Both of
was, I
us,
was,
both
I
of us
was,
wearing collars unprompted. So
I just
that's
somehow,
nice.
nobody will believe that it wasn't coordinated.
Yeah. Hey, viewers out there, you're welcome.
Yeah, exactly right. Are you, we got snow here on the ground in the greater Seattle area. What's it like where you are?
Nashville, go to Nashville. We had, temperatures in the teens about a week ago, and now we're back up to high 50s. So,
Oh, the high 50s sound nice. Yeah,
yeah.
things are shut down here. My kids been out of school. Yesterday they had no school. Today they had a late start. But the two older boys are in school, and my daughter is not in school. And I'm
Mm.
watching her in the baby monitor because I'm home solo with her, and she hopefully will fall asleep here soon. So we'll see. We're operating without a net. Man, I'll tell you what, I'm sure there's got to be some local. Here's the thing. I just said the times of the essence, and now I'm derailing us with a story. You know, there's got to be some local cuisine, I'm sure, in Nashville that's Nashville specific, but for some
Hot
reason,
chicken.
I don't know what it is around where I live. Everybody around here that's like a local is obsessed with teriyaki, chicken teriyaki,
Mm.
obsessed with it. Like there's teriyaki joints and all this stuff. And I've been here for as long as I have and honestly have never partaken in it. And so I got a recommendation the other day of this local joints. Okay, we picked up a styrofoam container, chicken teriyaki and rice for each member of the family. And man, in a world where most of the times you get shortchanged on portions, the weight of each one of these individual styrofoam containers was like, it felt like 3 pounds. I was like, oh my goodness, cracked it open. There must have been 7 chickens slaughtered per like every I've never seen so much chicken per one. My 15-year-old son, who's uh, 6'1", approaching 180 pounds, and just eats like a horse. He and my wife shared one styrofoam container and couldn't finish it between the two of
Wow.
them.
It's quite a rating for a teenage boy to not get through that. That's yeah.
Here's the problem. I got home a bit after them. I sat down, I cracked one open, I started like chit chat with my little girl.
Mm.
And I'm just going, and all of a sudden I look down at how much I've consumed out of this thing. And I'd almost like polished off the whole thing,
Mm.
unbeknownst to me. And I was like, oh no, I've made a grave mistake. And I felt good. And about 45 minutes later, something happened internally to my body that was like red alarm bells going off, and I've been full since last night at about 7 p.m. So,
The old molasses in the
oh,
bloodstream. Yep,
dude,
yep, I get it.
it was so good, and I put a dent in it. But that's it'll fuel me for today's workout.
I dig it. Yeah. Well, teriyaki is good, and it's Nashville hot chicken,
Hot
by the
chicken,
way.
okay,
It's a
okay.
big thing in Nashville. Yep.
What does hot chicken mean?
Super spicy fried chicken.
Oh, hot like I can't do any. Can you do spice?
I can approach doing spice. Like I'm not gonna say I'm like a, aficionado, but like I can do okay.
Okay.
Better than the average Canadian, I'll put it that way,
Right. The bar set pretty low.
Yeah.
I would be even below that bar. Well, we got a good topic to dive in today, and I'll do the housekeeping first, which is, thanks everybody. We appreciate your support. If you want to keep supporting the show, go to verynotrandom.com. Check all the cycles that we offer that can upload immediately to the btwb app for you. There's running programs, there's barbell work if that's your thing, for the power lifts and the Olympic lifts, all new capacity programs that we just kind of revamped. There is all kinds of get your firsts, strict pull-up, kipping pull-up, bar muscle-up, push-up, ring dip, handstand walk, like really good stuff, so check that out. And then on the gym owner side, whatever kind of gym or fitness facility you've got for workout tracking, gym management, and class scheduling, billing, BTWB has you covered with an all-in-one, so go ahead and check that out at btwb.com. Okay, so let's go ahead and kick off the show. And the topic today is basically, I'll encapsulate it as, you've got some choices out there for the workout that you do every day. Should you create your own workout and program for yourself and write it up every day or week or however you choose to do it? Or should you follow one of the many various programming options out there that might be free or paid or everything in between? And what are the pros and cons of those things? So that's the road that we're going to go down today.
Yes, I love it. And I think we should preface this like we preface so many other shows, Pat, by saying There is no utopia. And, any of these paths that you choose, I think, is going to have some scenarios where it fits really nicely and it makes a ton of sense to, pick one over the other. And then some scenarios where it doesn't fit and you might have to change streams down the track some time at some time. So I think that's the important thing to step away with is like, hey, this is just a tool set, and what tool you choose at what time may change based on your circumstance. So what are the circumstances that kind of outline why you should choose one over the other and when? Man, having a hard time with the marble mouth today.
Well, here will be my little lead in as well, which is getting back to one of the premises of our shows. Our shows are not only about fitness, but they're also about freedom. And do
Yeah.
whatever in the darn world you want to do. I've seen, as you'll see on social media or Reddit or whatever other just hellscape you decide to walk into, just somebody with this like planted my flag on this mountain and it is the only mountain. If you're not doing your own programming, you're a fool. And okay, or if you're not doing this, like whatever it is, it's like it's this or nothing. That's just nonsense. You do whatever you want to do based upon your inclinations, your interests, how much time you do or don't have to pursue something. And here's the other thing. Being an athlete or a coach or an owner or a trainer, man, how many different things do you have to do to run a gym or to run your own life? Even if you're not a
Hmm.
gym owner,
Yep.
I got 3 kids and limited free time. Like whatever it is, time is a precious commodity. And so if there's a whole bunch of things that you need to juggle and how you allocate that time, that's a highly individual choice as to what makes a better or worse sense for you. And that's different for everybody. So if anybody tries to say it's one way or the highway, I would immediately be highly suspicious of that person. And that's my lead in.
Yep. Fair enough. Well, I want to lead in by asking you, Pat, personally, over the span of your CrossFit career, and not just, having a workout program that you've written and, the various roles that you've held both for CrossFit and outside of CrossFit, but, your kind of place in the ecosystem. But for you personally, when you're talking about your fitness and what you've done over the years, has the majority of that been self-programmed, or has the majority of that, would you say, was something that you did with other people's program that you jumped in on?
For me, majority, well, in the early years, like starting in 2005, something else, like
Mhm.
whether it was .com or something, it was something else, because didn't know any better, didn't know what to do, where to start or whatnot. And then as the years went by, and I got more reps under my belt and more experience and interacted with more folks and had more conversations and blah blah blah, and started dabbling to various different things, started writing my own, and just turned out to be something that I genuinely enjoyed. And that, quite frankly, is the only reason that I continued doing it. If I didn't enjoy doing it, I would have stopped and started following somebody else again. But for initial handful of years, something else, and then after I developed a keen interest in it, then on my own.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, it is interesting. I think even just in that answer, it kind of gives you a really natural trajectory that I think a lot of people find themselves on, where, like you said, in the beginning, you don't know what you don't know. And so it's easy to kind of jump in and just mimic what is out there already, that's already done at a high level. You just kind of
Mm-hmm.
emulate that and you dig in and you learn what you can from it. Hopefully you pick up a few things along the way and you start to ask some questions as you get deeper in and say, okay, why does this work? What is it about this particular workout that I liked? Or what was it about this particular workout that I didn't like? What would I have done differently? And then over time, that almost starts to become intuitive. And I think that is like a pretty normal thing for most CrossFitters is you're like, well, let me put a couple of these movements together and see what happens. And like any
Mm-hmm.
other skill, it may not be super refined in the beginning. You're just putting some things out there and it could be a little rough around the edges, but at the end of the day, it's just a workout. It doesn't matter so much. And then, if that is of interest, then yeah, I think that is, like I said, kind of natural for people to fall into that position where they, at some point, start really directing their own fitness for a while. I see that pretty regularly.
Yeah, and the only thing that I would push back on whether you're doing your own thing or somebody else is that yes and no to that it's only just a workout. And I would say
Mm,
there's just there's a ceiling for that. And I would say
yeah.
like when you're a beginner, you can almost throw a dart at a wall. And you start moving your body like you need to get better at everything all the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff's going to move the needle even if it's a bit too repetitive or it's less refined or whatever it happens to be. In my personal opinion, anecdotal, I guess just based upon stories about like I track something, I would say that there's a there's a lot of potential. Like everything else, there's good and bad coaching, there's good and bad gyms, there's good and bad programming, and mediocre. I think there's a lot of people where programming will take them to um, intermediate purgatory forever. Like you
Sure.
get through the beginner
Yep.
and you just get to this huge pool of intermediacy, if that's a real
Hmm.
world, and you kind of stay there and you just don't break out. And then in order to break out of that after you've got more of a sustained volume of training under your belt, things do start to matter a whole lot more potentially than they did earlier on in the journey. So that would be just something I'd frame with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me clarify what I meant by that. I mean, regardless of where your fitness level is, if you're new to programming, don't be afraid to start putting some movements together, to
Oh,
start dabbling in that
don't be afraid
direction.
of mistakes.
Yeah, because you will come up with some stinkers. They're not going
Oh
to be
yeah.
they're
Oh
not going to be
yeah.
that refined,
Oh
but at the
yeah.
end of the day, it's okay because that skill will only get refined as you continue to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And one or two workouts in the mix that are subpar are not going to tank your entire track record of progress, nor will they be responsible for what happens in the future. So that was my only point there
Yes.
was don't be afraid of putting something out there that's a little subpar, knowing that it's done in service of kind of the refinement of that skill. That's
Well,
all I
like
meant.
like we've said with so many other things, right? That you can't skip the beginner phase. You can't,
Exactly.
and the beginner
Yep.
phase is going to be riddled with errors, whether it's
Yeah.
learning the power clean or learning to program. And then intermediate will have less errors, but they'll still be like it's just there's no way
Mhm.
around it. So you've got to start. You got to make errors. You just got to be open minded to learning. And so
Yep.
that's that. So I got a lot of things scratched down. I don't know if you have where you want to go for this. We can do the pros and cons of doing it for yourself versus somebody else, or what leaps into your head here.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think maybe kind of identifying a couple of personas, and then maybe we can give our opinion on what the best, kind of trajectory for that person might be. And so I can start with the beginner. That's the
Mm,
obvious one. We already kind of brought that up naturally, but when you have somebody who's a beginner, they don't really know the difference between something like a CrossFit or like a mixed modality program or any other gym program that they're going to encounter. In the beginning, it can be pretty overwhelming to understand the breadth of movements that are necessary to be capable in, understand, kind of the breadth of adaptation that you're looking for. And so for that reason, I think it's really great to start with that focus on copying somebody else, focus on having somebody else tell you what to do for a good amount of time until some of those variables kind of gel within your own experience to the point that you're not constantly kind of asking the question, what is this program after anymore? And that is something that I think takes longer than some people give it credit for. I don't know that just because you understand the words that are said on paper to describe a program like CrossFit, that you really have an understanding of how they fit together in a meaningful way. It takes time. You have to experience that, in my opinion. And the good and the bad of it. You have to experience what's too much, what's too little. You have to experience what it feels like to have a really hard effort and then
mm-hmm.
step away from that effort knowing that it was A, enough, and B, it didn't beat you up so much that you couldn't come back and do it again in a day or two. These are all things that are difficult just with the written word or the read understanding of it. So in my opinion, I think it takes a good while for people to kind of dip their toe in and just be guided before they start digging in on their own. So for the beginner persona, that's my recommendation: is find something that you like, that you think somebody's got some experience, and their program speaks for itself. It's got a good reputation. Sit with it for a while and see what you can learn from it and experience it. That's the important part. Don't just sit there and study it at night, but dig in and
Mm-hmm.
have the experiential end of it too, because you'll learn a ton that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I fully agree. If you're a beginner, you get enough to learn as it
Yep.
is, and you could
Hmm.
potentially make some bad mistakes if you try to, on top of getting yourself back in shape and now learning to do something that you don't have any experience doing. You could just put yourself in an unnecessarily hole, beat up some muscle groups way more than they need, just slow down your progress. Like, there's no
Sure.
reason to make, getting back into shape and learning all this stuff is hard enough as it is. There's no reason to compound it. So yeah, go with somebody you know, like, and trust, and go ahead and join that train for a while. I think is the way to go. Um, you know, I could say, if you did want to, we can get to maybe your next persona here in a while, but I would say, just for everyone out there, if you do want to program for yourself, like maybe you've broken out of that beginner deal, right? And now you've got some reps and you're like, you know what? I want to start dabbling. This dabbling's fun. Boz said he's a professional dabbler before. Like, dabbling sounds like a good time. I'm going to dabble in programming. Um, you know, I can cover the pros and cons of potentially doing that. I try to do it as fairly as I can. I would say that if I started with the pros, if you wanted to start dabbling yourself, the pro is that you're probably going to learn a lot. Like
Mhm.
so many things that at first seem rather simple, when you might realize that something which seems simple and understated and elegant is actually really tough to put together. So there's going to be a beautiful learning curve as to and it will give you an appreciation for how much actually goes into the process and what's truly involved, whether it's your gross movement patterns, your time domains, your rep ranges, the movement selection. Are you going to have an intentionally high level of interference, a low one? Like, it goes on and on. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, like, there's a whole heck of a lot more variables to even consider that I even knew when I would just show up and go, oh, this is the workout each day. And then when you try to, you know, break it down, engineer it, and build it back up, all of a sudden you're like, well, there's a lot of stuff I need to take into account. So that learning curve will probably be steep, but that's a really good thing. Just like stressing your musculature is good for you, like stressing the old noggin in the brain with regards to your strength and conditioning is only going to make you a better informed, more aware, more cognizant athlete, and that's a really great thing. And that there's more I can hit, but I'll just kind of pause there and throw it back to you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I guess the question that follows is always why? Why would I make the switch from just showing up and having a program given to me and I just execute on that? I just show up and do the work. Why would I transition to, okay, now I'm going to start dabbling on my own? I mean, the obvious answer is it is interesting to you and it's something that, you might just have some natural curiosity. That makes a lot of sense. I'll take it one step further and say that I think at a certain level, everybody should start tinkering with this stuff because, like I've tried to browbeat this concept across before, I think that there's a certain amount of physical literacy that people should be comfortable with. And along with that comes learning some basic movements so that you can kind of self-coach and you can pick them up and do them anywhere. You can take them
Mm-hmm.
with you. Can't be borrowed or stolen from you. Once you have that knowledge, it's like it's in there. So that's really valuable. The same is true with programming because at a certain point, every single one of us that's responsible, I mean, really, I'm the only person that's responsible for my fitness. Nobody else can show up and do the work for me, even if it's easier to have somebody coaching me and have a group around me. I still have to show up and do the work.
Mm-hmm.
That being true means that inevitably in everybody's life there will be a scenario where you're going to show up somewhere and that group is not available or that coach is not available or you're in a weird environment for a prolonged period
Self-sufficient.
of time. Exactly. And you're going to have some decisions to make. Okay, what am I going to do absent access to the gym or absent access to the internet for a few days or absent access to this coach that I've been relying on? And I don't think it's beyond anybody's reach to have enough of a grasp of the basics that you can get through those kind of dry patches until you do get back to the mainland, so to speak.
Oh yeah.
So to me, I think it's one of those invaluable skills that even if it's not something you want to do full time, or even maybe it doesn't really interest you that much, it's nice to have the basics just so that you've got that in the back pocket should you need to pull it out sometime, because all of us will at some point or another.
I would say, yeah, and it falls under that general umbrella of improving your, what I like to call, like, your fitness IQ, your strength and
Yeah,
conditioning
yeah,
IQ.
exactly.
You
Yep.
know, and that might be, I mean, maybe your gym or coach offers you the workout of the day in three different options, which is wonderful. Maybe they offer you seven
Hmm.
different options. Fill in the blank. But you went down over the weekend on a mountain bike and you hit your elbow. You like, and you could look at that and due to having increased your fitness IQ, go, yeah, I see the 7 options, but you know what? I can
Mhm.
understand what they got going on. I understand what they got, where they're going with this workout. I understand what the intent is, and I'm gonna modify it in this way and still achieve what's supposed to be achieved. That's a really cool superpower to have. And if that seems overwhelming right now because you're new in your fitness journey, you're like, no, how could I do that? If you dedicate a little bit of time to this, you will develop that ability. And dabbling into some programming is one of the many ways which will aid you in that process. And so that
Mhm.
is valuable just for that. And other things I would say under like the pro category of starting to, things you'll have to think about that will open your aperture, if you will, as to everything going on top of all those other things I already mentioned is how much work is the quote unquote right amount of work for most people under most circumstances, most of the
Mhm.
time, or you individually? How many times a week should you get into the gym? How long should those sessions be? What should the total volume of work? How much volume can you take before your intensity suffers? How much rest do you need to go back in and feel how you should between the years and your musculature? Like all of that doesn't happen just randomly and magically. Like that has to be figured out the hard way or engineered or whatnot. And then, what is the focus if you want to start dabbling with programming? What's the focus going to be? Is it going to be pure, true GPP, like well rounded fitness where you're greedy? I want to get better with the barbell and I want my conditioning and I want to get better at gymnastics and I want them all together. Or do you love the barbell and you're going to have just an Olympic focus or a powerlifting focus? Like
Mhm.
all of that's going to shift the sort of programming that you create and how the structure with the whole 9 yards. So, all of that stuff is going to be figured out by you and you'll be a better athlete for it.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to look at kind of a persona that I think is a little more nuanced, but many of us have found ourselves there, at least at some point in our life. And that is the person that has, kind of gone beyond this beginner phase. They have taken an interest and they're largely kind of self guided for a time.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have fallen into that category, I think, for a large part of my kind of CrossFit experience, where I really preferred coming up with my own workouts, doing my friends' workouts, not following a program to the letter. I didn't often do that outside of a few specific periods of time. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was great to be able to have that kind of flexibility that you could just pick and choose as you saw fit or as you saw something interesting. There was, a new way to approach something. It was like, great, let's give it a shot. There was an experimental nature that I thought was really appealing and just a lot of fun. And hey, at the other end of it, it's like, yeah, you're still getting fitter because of it. It's pretty cool. Um, that being said, at a certain point, excuse me, man, I can't
You
get
need a
myself
you need a
together here.
fisherman's friend.
Something, man. Yeah. Still looking for that sponsorship if you're out there, fisherman's friend. Um, at a certain point, life gets you busy enough and you have to start making decisions with what are you going to do with your time. And there's a certain amount of time that's going to go into how am I going to warm up? What is the workout that I'm going to do? Let's lay this out so I can do it every day. And I'll tell you, several years ago, I joined an affiliate for the first time ever when we first moved to Nashville. And I couldn't believe how much of a luxury it was to show up and just have somebody on a platter
Right.
serve it up to you. And all you're responsible for is showing
Right.
up and they say, do this. And you're like, oh, this is
There is
amazing.
something nice to that.
Yeah, I can totally understand the appeal, despite the fact that my natural inclination is to try to do it myself. And the learning point to me in that was like, hey, there is a time where even if, this is largely my profession, it's something I've done a long time, there's still an opportunity there for somebody who's got a lot of experience to step back and outsource. And at certain times in your life, man, it can be one of the best things for you to do because not only does it take that thing off of your plate, but it puts you right back into that position of kind of observation through experience where you can sit back and say, okay, I've been doing my own program for a long time and I've been making all these decisions, but I know that I bring my own bias to the table within that. When I have to step back and just do what somebody else is doing for me, it puts me back in that perspective of like, okay, why was this decision made? And like, would I approach it the same way? And if I didn't want to approach it the same way, what would I have done differently? And it really reignited that whole process again for me because I was taken out of the day-to-day of just making the workouts on my own in my own vacuum. So
Man.
it was a really cool experience to for multiple reasons to be able to do that. So
Well, I think you nailed it right there. Is that getting back to what we said at the beginning? If there is no one right answer, right? I mean, if you're going to be in this fitness game long term, then you're most likely going to be working out during various phases of your life. Busy phases, then phases where you have a ton of free time, phases where your interests vary. I
yep,
mean, I'm here to tell you, I almost feel like sometimes programming is like almost like romanticized. Like it's just,
sure,
sitting in the comfy
yep.
chair with the pipe and just, creating this architecture. Like a
With
lot of it is
many leather-bound books in the background.
100%. The
Consult the
reality,
mysterious tome.
yes, the reality is a lot of it is actually profoundly boring.
Sure.
Because it's just like to figure out where you're going takes like a really good analysis of where you've been and it's necessary, but it's laborious and tedious and
To do it well, for sure.
and all
Yep.
that stuff. I don't think that's actually like that's not part of the romanticized view. I'm actually sorting out a new 4-week block right now. I've got all these various papers here with different like movements and gross movement patterns and whatnot. Like this one right here just has upper body pulling and like midline work. And like for upper body pulling, I'm just going back on like the last time that like just kipping chin over bar pull-ups have come up. They're the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times that they came up. What were the last 5 times, the 5 dates, and then what were the rep ranges? Like I don't want them to all be 21, 15, 9. I don't want them to all be Angie. I don't want them to all whatever. And playing that game for kipping pull-ups, strict pull-ups, weighted pull-ups, chest to bar kipping, chest to bar strict, ring muscle-ups, bar muscle-ups, rope climbs with legs, rope climbs legless, rope climbs L-sit, ring rows. That's just upper body pulling. Like it's not this it's not as glorious as it sometimes seems. And so like if you enjoy that, fantastic. But I think doing it for yourself will help you realize very quickly whether or not this is a way that you want to spend your time, or you start to go down your road, you're like, I'd rather just show up and have the meal prepared for me. And again, neither one's right or wrong. It just, it is what it is and depends upon what phase of life that you're in.
Yeah. And, kind of to take it all the way back to the beginning, I really think that there is a great deal to be gained by having the flexibility to do both. And I guess what I was trying to get at with my last anecdote there personally, or that persona of somebody who was interested, but through life circumstance started, just doing somebody else's program. The point there is that having the flexibility of mindset to be able to step back and say, okay, I like to do this, and I think maybe there's something wrapped in there that I think I can do it better.
Yeah.
But there's a certain time to step back and just say, okay, I'm going to let this go for a little bit, and I'll still be A, fine with my fitness, and B, there's probably a lot to learn there. Understanding that, I think, is really powerful and freeing. And, recognizing sometimes, okay, my interest has come back to the point where I do want to be standing in front of the whiteboard and I do want to be generating these ideas on my own. Awesome. Run with it. But if you're trying to force it, that's going to come across in the program, and vice versa. If you're doing somebody else's program and you're hating it and you can't see the logic in it and you're not open to learning anything from it, well, hey, you got to recognize that as well.
Hey, hold that thought.
Okay.
Note to the editor, I'm going to leave the room. My little girl is yelling. And I'm going to come right back, and we'll either keep this in because it'll be funny, or we'll edit it right out. Hold right there. Don't go anywhere.
Sounds good. This is the part of the show I get to talk poorly about Pat. Been waiting for this for over 200 episodes now. Can finally get it off my chest. What a terrible co-host I think he is, and just can't believe I have to carry the show all the time. It's rough. Really rough. You guys should all feel bad for me.
All right, so I'm back. So if there was a weird cut or jump, everybody, sorry. The home solo with the little girl right now, she just needed her father, and now I'm good to go. Okay, so where in the heck were we?
Well, we were talking about the utility of having a little bit of flexibility to switch back and forth between times where you are all in, running your own program, stepping aside and letting other people do it, and recognizing the signs where Maybe you're finding it arduous to put your own program together. Maybe it's better to take somebody else's for a time, or the opposite, when you're no longer getting what you need out of a program and you're getting a little frustrated by the process, recognizing that maybe it's time to switch tracks the other direction as well.
And I would say, I think, just not to slam it into the ground, but I think one of the biggest things is really just whether or not you enjoy it.
Yeah.
I really think that's it. Like, you don't have to love programming to
Yeah,
be a gym owner.
absolutely.
You don't have to love programming to be a trainer or whatever. Like, it's just, again, of all the things to do, it's like, do you really enjoy it? And
Well, and sorry not to cut you off, Pat, but I'll take that one step further and say that not only do you not have to be interested in it, you don't have to be good at it. Meaning, you could be an amazing coach, but not a very good programmer. It's
100%.
not all
It's
that
the same
uncommon.
thing that if somebody, maybe you're pretty darn good at everything and so's got something going on with their squat clean that you can't see. You're like, you know what? Let me call over the other trainer because, man, they got an eye for Olympic lifts that I just don't
Exactly.
have. That's okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's a smart thing to do,
Well, and in fact, if you can recognize it within yourself and you can bring in somebody who can get the better result, that's good for everybody. And so yeah, if you're somebody that doesn't like programming or you're not particularly good at it and you don't care to get good at it, hey, there are other places to invest your time. The good news is, man, more than ever, there are some really great things happening out there that you can dig into and use as a viable outsourcing.
For sure. And
dozens of great programs out there today.
with programming, what I would say too is, in some ways, it's like painting a room or painting your house or something like that, where you might get people that like painting a room or something like that, but there's not a lot of people that enjoy the prep work of painting, of like meticulously taping around all the trim. They'd rather jump off a bridge and like cutting in with like a little brush around windowsills or whatever. But once you get all that like taping and trimming and cut work done, well, then you can go through with like the roller and paint the walls. That's not too bad, but it's all that like miserable, painstaking prep work that actually made the other stuff go so well and makes it look so good at the end. All that stuff, like I just walked through, like the upper body pulling and like doing that for every gross movement pattern, every time domain, everything, like that's all the painting, taping, and trim work that makes the actual finished product what it is. But that prep work's not super fun, fun.
Yeah.
Like that's where I think the overly romanticized deal is. But if you're one of those weirdos that enjoys it, cool. And so again, I think there's a whole bunch of things in the pro category that I think we've hit. And there are some cons that we can dive into as well, if that's
for sure. And so we're talking the con of
programming for yourself.
Program? Yeah, well, I think the con that you just illustrated there is that it is tedious if you want to really do a thorough job. And to extend your metaphor a little bit, I think most of us have enough of a DIY spirit that once a year or so, when the time comes up and you're really feeling motivated, you'll get in there and you'll paint that spare room.
Yeah, you will.
And it's going to look great. But most of us aren't going to fool ourselves into thinking, you know what, I should switch careers and be a full-time house painter.
Right.
Usually it doesn't follow that that's, just the natural extension of doing it this one time. And I think that's something that people dismiss when it comes to programming. They don't see all that trim work that you're talking about. They do get fired up for a little bit. They, give a week or two or a month or two, things are rocking and rolling, and then they come up for air and they say, wait a minute, do this for the rest of my life? That's a long time to commit to this. And I think sometimes that commitment, you don't see how deep it can go at the outset. So that's a big con, is just the time to do it well. It can be a little obsessive. And before you know it, you can be so deep in that you got to ask yourself if that's the best use of your particular time. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a great hobby that you truly enjoy. But, you got to be objective about that sort of thing.
Yeah, I would say if we're talking just cons, I think we hit the pros pretty good, of which there are many. Just cons, you might find out that it's not as easy as it first appears, that you might run into the whole thing, like I said, that you thought you were maybe good at it, but you were like in the beginner gains thing, and now you're in intermediate purgatory. I feel it has been overly romanticized, and then you'll run into the boring monotony of it as well. I think one of the other things, I think the times thing is huge. I think one of the other things as well is I think it's a unique bird that can actually, like, no kidding, day after day, week after week, month after month, and year after year, program in an unbiased, neutral way what actually is required to drive the needle forward and not
Yep.
just what is fun, fluffy, and you like to do. That is that's a unique skill set. And so
Yeah.
it's really tough. It's really tough to do that if you're actually now if you love to lift heavy and that's what you're going for, you might have an easier time. But if you're looking to actually be well-rounded, when's the last time you sat down and penciled out uh, 7 rounds for time of a 400-meter run and one L-sit rope climb that begins seated on the floor?
Yeah.
Probably been a while,
Yep. Yeah, I'm
so
so glad that you said that because I was going to bring up something really similar, which is that, yeah, the bias element of it kind of extends to your own physical capacities when you're programming. The two go hand in hand.
easy
And
to
so,
do, man. It's easy to
yeah,
do.
well, and so if you're somebody whose natural inclination, let's take it the other direction, is to be an endurance athlete, chances are your program skews in that direction subconsciously.
Yeah.
Even if you say to yourself, I want to be better at gymnastics and lifting, you don't know what you don't know, and you're probably less familiar with those elements
It just
due to
starts to
what you're
slide.
exactly, and maybe even without knowing it. And
Yeah,
so
oh,
you kind
sure.
of keep pushing in those directions that you're already good at, and you never really develop that well-roundedness. So yeah, I completely agree, man. That's a tough thing to break out of, an even tougher thing to see. And then once you see it, you got to take that next step to say, okay, there's probably a ton that I don't know about these other things. That's why I'm not very good at them. How do I learn them enough to integrate them well to actually move the needle? That's a tall order.
Yeah, and it happens little by little. It's just like,
Hmm.
things are going great when you're weighing and measuring all your food, and then you're like, I'm going to stop weighing and measuring. The portions tend to increase, not decrease.
Yeah.
Like there's just a gradual
It's a
slide.
one-way street
And
for
then before
most
you
of
know
us.
it, you've eaten 3 pounds of chicken teriyaki, and you just wonder
Yeah.
what you just wonder
Hey.
what's happened. So yeah, I would say those are I think a fair assessment of the cons as well.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think the other side of the coin, if we're ready to go there, is I think
Sure.
there's pros and cons of following somebody else's programming. I don't think it's all
Hmm.
roses.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the pros, like we talked about, were the time management, especially if you're at a period of your life that's very busy or you don't have a lot of brain space to offer to that sort of task. Yeah, it makes perfect sense to outsource it. But on the other hand, the con is that you're really at the whim of whoever's putting that together, and their skill may vary wildly, and their motivation to be doing it may vary wildly as well. I've seen this happen, from time to time. Everybody's human who's putting these programs together. And you can have somebody who's a quote unquote great programmer fall off due to life events in their own little world,
100%.
or burnout, or whatever. There's a million reasons why somebody who could be really good and really competent at what they're doing suddenly goes through a period that they're not as much. And that is something that you kind of have to grin and bear if you're on the other end of that program. So, that's always the one that you got to watch out for. You're at the whim of whoever's at the helm.
Yes. And I would say I jotted a couple things down as far as following somebody else's programming. The pros, the first pro you mentioned, some of these might be a bit repetitive, but there are subject matter experts in darn near every domain that you can think of, and programming is another one of them. So if you can find somebody that you know, like, and trust, and key element here is has a proven track record, and plenty of those people exist, then great. You will enjoy a tidal wave of free time back in your life, and you will have, what I didn't mention a second ago when you were talking about how you're a professional dabbler, and for plenty of your life you would come up to work each day and it was an enjoyable experience for you. Well, there's all sorts of different people out there. Some people that causes them incredible stress, like not knowing what the next day is. And so
Mm.
for just as many people that it's this fun, pleasant, whimsical experience, for other people it's a stress-inducing, like,
Yeah.
the heck am I going to do tomorrow? And so that's, that can be removed off as well. And then all those painstaking, like getting back to my painting example, all that taping and cutting and all that stuff's removed from you, and that's really cool as well. The con, probably just the largest con, quite frankly, is you don't follow the programmer that you should, and either that's somebody that is a bit of a charlatan and has led you to believe for whatever reason that they're good at what they're doing, but they're not. Maybe they're just good at making workouts look hard, and that has
Or
lured,
marketing themselves.
or marketing themselves. That wouldn't happen in social media, boss.
Yeah,
Marketing,
exactly.
ad campaigns, uh, just making workouts that seem like super tough for what it is. Like there's plenty of pitfalls to fall into. Or, another one is maybe you actually did follow somebody that is really good at what they do, but it's not what you wanted or needed. You didn't know that they had this bias. You didn't know that they had an endurance bias. You didn't know that they had a weightlifting bias. You didn't know whatever it was, and you were looking for something else, and now your fitness skewed in a different direction. That's possible, but the largest one is just probably you follow, and I hear this regularly enough to know that it's a thing, is you followed somebody with good intentions, and either they weren't as good at what they did as you thought they were, or they were just slopping way too much on your plate, and now your knees, back, and shoulders are paying a price. That could be something which goes along with following something which is not ideal or well thought out as well. There's some CrossFit saying, whoever came up with it beats me, but like, it's not hard to make a hard workout. It's really not. And a hard workout doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good workout or it's the right workout or any of those other things. The human creature, getting back into what goes into programming, is this: you're trying to do this beautiful dance of stressing the system, just taking your foot off the gas a little bit, stressing it and taking it a bit off. And like, if every day is just hard slog followed by hard slog followed by hard slog, depending upon what phase of life you're in and how old you are, you might be able to tolerate that for a short, medium, or long period of time. And you may actually see things go in a decent direction, due to the shock in the system, whatever you had going. But most of the time, that sort of a fitness protocol ends at the same dead end over and over again, whether you get to the end of that street short or long, like it takes you that place. So all those things are just the potential pitfalls of following bad programming, or the wrong programming is maybe just a way to say it.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. I really don't have much more to add beyond that. So yeah, my wrap up would be that, remain flexible. I think it is a valuable skill to understand the basics so that you can pull it out as needed. And then decide for yourself whether it's something that interests you enough to be able to dedicate the time to it, to be able to do it well, and program for yourself. And if you're not, that's okay too. Just recognize that, yeah, I'll let somebody else handle this aspect of my fitness for me. Even more reason to have that much kind of base knowledge so that you can see what you just described. Hey, this program's not serving me, or it's not put together all that well. Okay, well, now I can at least have an informed decision about that and maybe find something that suits my needs a little better.
Do you have a workout that you're hitting today?
I
Or is
already
it an off
did,
day?
man. I did a quick little garage sesh this morning. I went through the classic CrossFit warm-up ×3. So squats, push-ups, pull-ups, all that good stuff. And then I just hit a quick little, I didn't have a lot of time this morning, a 10-minute little burner, 15 burpees on the odd minutes and 15 72-pound kettlebell swings on the even minutes. And just a
How
quick
many
little
swings?
10 minutes. 15.
15 and 15.
Yep, for 10 minutes. And
Okay.
it was plenty for the day.
How is, in a workout like that for you, how is holding 15 burpees per minute? Like, how much time do you have left in the minute when that's...
For this workout, knowing I only had 5 sets of each, I was it was right where I needed to be. If
Okay.
it was 6 or 7 sets, we were starting to fall off. But I finished the burpees at about 40 seconds. So I had
Okay.
about 20 seconds to go. But that number was like the sweet spot for where I'm at right now and where my motivation was this morning. I could hit 15 full gas every round and come out okay. And yeah, like I said, if it was like a 15-minute EMOM or a 20-minute EMOM, I think we would have had a different outcome.
Yeah. I've got one I got to do today that's intended for a lot of people to be an opportunity to stomp the gas. Like one of those
Nice.
ones that you look
Yep.
at, you're like, I think I can do some damage on that. It's reasonable. It's actually reasonable. So it's 3 movements. It's 21, 15, 9. of a 95-pound push press,
Ooh, I like it already. That's fun.
a box jump,
Okay.
and with a 53-pound bell or a 35-pound bell, a Russian swing. So push press,
Nice.
box jump, Russian swing, 21:15.9. Just go ahead and press the accelerator all the way down to the floor and see what you can do.
I do like that. That's appealing. I might add that one to the list to hit a little later this week. That's good.
Yeah, and so I got to go out there. Overhead's not my friend, but I think I can do
Yeah.
that today with uh, an appropriately loaded pair of dumbbells, and I
Yeah.
can, It won't be beautiful, but my overhead. No one's ever said, "Oh, the guy with the beautiful overhead, Pat Sherwood." But it'll be good for me, and that actually goes back to what we spoke about earlier with the strength and conditioning IQ, the fitness IQ, understanding
Mhm.
workouts, realizing that you can scale and modify as needed and still achieve what you're supposed to achieve. And it's a wonderful thing to be able to do. It makes fitness fun. So that's
Absolutely.
that's it. Well, yeah, curious everybody's thoughts on this topic. I got a feeling it will probably resonate with a lot of folks. Self program, follow somebody else's program. You've dabbled back and forth, the pros and cons of each. Go ahead and find the show on the BTWB YouTube channel. Post your thoughts under the comments. And if you have an idea for a future show, let us know. We read all those comments. And if you don't want to post there, you can go to the Varied Not Random Instagram page. You can post a public comment on any of the posts there. Or if you want to be more anonymous, you can send a direct message to the Varied Not Random Instagram account. All those things make their way to us. And we appreciate you, everybody. So for Adrian Bosman, I'm Pat Sherwood, and we will see you next time.